My name is Beth MacDonald Stone, and I'm an avid knitter and knitwear designer coming to you from Bermuda. It's been 2 weeks since my last podcast, and I'm excited to chat with you all about what's been going on. There's been a lot of knitting, can't wait to chat. So let's dive right in. Today I've got a new setup. I have slowly started to change my office from interior design to knitting. It's a slow process. So I've done one wall, which is super exciting, and it's wonderful to have all of my own sort of designs up here in this area, separated from all the other knitwear that I've worked on. I learned so much from both, but it's really great to have the luxury of space to see what I've been working on design-wise, and to have them separated, because I when they're all together, I didn't realize how I couldn't really see it, and I couldn't see sort of the thought processes that, some have been completed and taken to publication, some hadn't, some are still great ideas that I just hadn't really fleshed out to a point that I'm satisfied with. So now I've got this space here, which I'm really excited about, and I think it's going to be really helpful with just my design process and working off of existing thoughts and things like that, and also new ones will always come up and stuff like that, but yeah, I'm really excited about this. So I hope you like this setup. I don't know if this is going to be all the time. It's a gloomy day here in Bermuda today. It's mid-February, which usually means it's really rainy. So it's a really rainy day today, so overcast. So sitting in my kitchen is usually beneficial because the daylight is fantastic up there, so great natural light. Down here it's never going to be as fantastic for natural light, but since we don't really have anything like that today, we might as well use artificial lights above. So anyways, welcome, glad you're here. We're going to talk about knitting, if that's not your bag, but I hope it is, because it is mine. I get super excited about it. So today, the project that I want to talk about primarily with knitting is the Bermy Basic. I'm going to start publishing them. There'll be 9 patterns for 9 different gauges. Same sweater, just in 9 different gauges. So I'm publishing them as I get through the test knitting stage. I loved the idea of waiting for them all to be ready, but to be honest, it's just it would take a long time, and I'm finding I can get confused between the different ones, because it's of course just subtle variations in numbers. And while I have great spreadsheets and everything separated, I think for ease of mind and everything, and working with test knitters and all of that good stuff, I'm just going to roll them out 2 or 3 at a time. So the first 2 are going to come out, will be out when you see this podcast, so they'll have come out, I think I'm shooting for Thursday the 22nd, I believe. Yep, 22nd of February. And then the next 2 gauges have already gone into testing, so I'm hoping to roll those out, I believe, mid-March, I think. Something like that, and then we'll just keep it going for all 9 gauges. So the way that this sweater pattern booklet group works is that it's a basic pattern. That's why it's called the Bermy Basic. It's a basic sweater pattern, and it's going to take you from a 12 stitch gauge per 4 inches 10 centimeters all the way up to a 28 stitch gauge 10 centimeters 4 inches, and then all in increments of 2. So it'll be 12 stitch, 14, 16, 18, 20, and so on. The concept is so that when we all fall in love with really interesting yarn at our local yarn shops, there isn't really one in Bermuda, but when we're in lovely yarn shops or at festivals, which I love to go to, we don't have to feel the pressure that there's nothing, we don't know like what pattern should be used. Like, this is your basic pattern. And then the idea also is I'm encouraging everyone to sort of riff off of it. I mean, I've stuck pretty close to the patterns for the ones that I've knit, and I'll show you a few of those. Just because I really want to flesh out yardages and just make sure that the simple pattern is great. But I can't wait to start working on them and embellishing them. A lot of my test knitters have started doing that, and it's so exciting. Some with the increases, putting in unique increases, adjusting the simple stuff like adjusting body length, sleeve length, etc., etc. There's so many more things you can do. I have one test knitter right now for the ones that'll come out in March that are putting in a small Apiri colorwork pattern into the yoke. The yoke so far, that's all I've seen. Let's see what she does. I've had other people stripe it, mixing yarns, doing all sorts of really amazing things, using yarn overs for increases, so creating a little eyelet pattern with the because the increases are spaced very in a very rhythmic placement, so it does create a pattern, which is really cool. So it's supposed to be the perfect basic pattern, and then you can go from there. So the one I'm wearing right now is one that is just off my needles. This is the 26, and I did 2 different sleeves, which I think is really fun. So this, I was really inspired by the yarn. The yarn is Townhouse Yarns Olla No.2, color Bad Girl Riri. Anyways, love this yarn. It's really great. It's real woolly wool, it's sort of has a dry hand, so it's not scratchy or anything. There's no scratch to it at all, but it has that dry hand similar to, say, Loft from Brooklyn Tweed, which I really like, and it creates a different sort of structure for a sweater. Or garment. I'm really excited about it. And I loved the dyeing effect. You can see that I didn't helically knit this at all. I really wanted it to be as, I'll stand up, excuse my chair noise. I wanted it sort of like the speckles just to play out, kind of like a watercolor painting. I've got kind of a bulky dress underneath it, so excuse the funny belt and everything. But yeah, so this is, that is the 26 stitch gauge. I love it, love it, love it. And I love, love, love this yarn. I can't wait to find it again and try some other ones, because it really is very special. And again, that's Townhouse Yarns. The gauges that are actually getting published is not 26. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. But the gauges that are going to be published when this podcast is out is the 18 stitch gauge, which I have here, and really love it. This is using, oh gosh. And it's so funny. It's the one thing I didn't write down, and it's a gal. I really like her hand dyeing, and she is in the States, and I pick up my stuff from her at Rhinebeck, and her name is, oh my gosh, okay, pause. Fashion School Dropout. Really love her work, and the color is Lady Glitter Sparkles on her Boucle base. So really cool. I don't think I helically knit this at all, and I love how the color works out. I also love the Boucle yarn because it's a great lightweight yarn, so it's great for sort of those in-between seasons. Really pleased with that. So that's the 18 stitch gauge Bermy Basic, and the 24 is also coming out, which I showed you, I think, in the last episode. So I'm not wearing it today. And that is this one that I knit using Bien Aimee Felix held double. And this one, again, I think I helically knit. No, I didn't helically knit it at all, because there was already 2 strands, so I just didn't want 4, and I just didn't really care about that pooling. I think it's kind of groovy. Sometimes I really care about it, and I will helically knit, absolutely, but sometimes with these sort of expressive fibers, I just don't care, and I really like it. And yeah, so that was really a great one. And it's funny, I wore this 24 stitch gauge a lot at Vogue Knitting Live in New York, and I got a lot of compliments. And I got a lot of compliments, actually, interestingly enough, just from people in shops or out and about or at a restaurant or whatever, which I thought was really interesting, because someone not in the knitting industry, which is really cool. I mean, it's a pretty plain sweater. That's the concept. It's a Bermy Basic. And so you can totally let the yarn do all the work for you, or you can get totally creative with it and make it however you want. Another one that I knit, I've knit a ton of them, but another one that's just sitting right here beside me is, I believe, the 18 stitch gauge, which will be in the next round to come out. And I used, this is Hedgehog Fibers in their tweedy base, the noir. And I love this one. This is just one that I wear all the time. So yeah, so it's a really simple pattern. Here you can see there is short row shaping in the neck just to bring the back of the neck up higher. I've got 2 sleeve options, a fitted and a straight sleeve. My yardages all are for the straight sleeve because that uses more yarn. And so I just want to make sure everyone's covered. It's got a nice deep hem. It's a bit, there's no shaping on the side. So again, there's so much you can do with it. It's just a basic pattern, not a recipe. It's a lot more than a pattern. It's a really basic pattern for you to have as a foundation and also to play off of and really riff off of and have fun with. So yeah, so the 24 and the 18 will be out now. And now, see, this is why I'm doing it 2 at a time, because then the next ones will come out in March, and I'm not even going to say what they are because I'm confusing myself already because I'm planning for the ones after that. So you can see why I'm doing it 2 at a time and publishing it, because I can twist my brain in circles and circles. So there you go. So yeah, so that's really fun. This is my off my needles. That's pretty much it. And we're working hard on that exciting stuff. The next sweater to come out that's not Bermy Basic, which will be early March, is the Tamarind Sweater. And this was my first one that I knit before Christmas. I love it. It's fun. I knit this with 2 yarns held double. So Birdie from Lamb Kid carried along with a Holst Garn as sort of a carry along, or if not Holst Garn, woolly knit from the UK. I love them. They're just sort of stabilizing yarns, and then you let the birdie sing. So this is Birdie Pop Rocks carried along with a woolly knit in I think they call it like bright pink or something like that. And then the red, sort of tomato red, is plaid is my favorite color from Birdie, Lamb Kid, and brandy from Holst Garn Supersoft. So it's a really fun sweater, a bigger neckline, again, short rows in the neck, and the hem, elongated hem, a straight sleeve with a big cuff. So the one I'm working on now, I wanted to do it in different colors because I do find that when I knit a pattern in such dramatic colors, people are sort of fixated on the colors and not so much the pattern. So I wanted to do it in different colors too. Just, I see those as like really warm colors, and I'd like to do sort of, this is my cool version, cool colored version. So this is, again, Lamb Kid Birdie, here in bell bottom blues, held double with Holst Garn Supersoft color Cool, and then Lamb Kid Birdie held color Loam, that Loam color from Birdie, held double with Holst Garn Supersoft dark olive. And I'm really excited about this. I've just finished the yoke, and I'm all set to split for sleeves. I can count myself, and so you can see there's a pattern here. I can flip around numbers. So what I like to do, and I don't know if anyone else does this, and the last few rows of rounds before separating from sleeves, I like to place stitch markers just to make sure that I'm counting correctly and I haven't deviated in my numbers. So you can see here, like this morning, I just, there's my beginning of round here, that unique stitch marker. And then I've just used other coconut stitch markers for the sleeves. I tend to put a stitch marker in the center front. I find sometimes that's helpful. And then I'll do the same thing for the other sleeve. When I do actually separate for the sleeves, the other thing I like to do is on the center back, I will put a light bulb removable stitch marker at the point where I've separated, because I find it easier to measure from the center back your body length than your underarm, because your underarm, of course, until it's picked up, it curls a bit, and so it's a bit deceptive, and it's really hard to figure out exactly the measurement needed. So I'll do that in the next round when I separate from sleeves. And then separating for sleeves, I love the barber cords. I don't use the barber cords themselves as a name brand. Many years ago, my girlfriend had figured this out, Priscilla, who's a great knitter, and she ordered a ton, and I did too, of, they call them like Scooby cords or whatever off of Amazon, and they're just the plastic hollow tubes. So I use those as well, and and it was like $10 for a massive amount. So I've got a huge jar of them in my office, and I love them. I use them for everything. So excited to separate from the sleeves. At the point when you're going around and around at your shoulders, of course, there's a lot of stitches on the needle, so it seems sort of slow, but that's okay. We're not in a rush. But I do like it when I separate from sleeves and I'm on the body, and the body just seems to grow kind of so much faster, which is fun. So I would like to get that second one knit and photographed before the pattern comes out, which will probably be the pattern highlight for next time, which we can go over the whole thing again, but I'll try and add some other interesting points. But yeah, so the idea there would be to have two main kind of pattern colors for the pattern itself. And then, of course, I've got lovely test knitters doing amazing things. I can't wait to show you all of those. Everyone is putting their own spin color-wise. I have one, color makes such a huge difference. It's almost unrecognizable, the pattern in different colors. And even between the cool and the warm tone, you can really see such a difference. But it's amazing with other people's visions, other people's use of yarns. Amazing. I also have another test knitter that's using 3 colors. So the center of the balls or gourds, tamarind gourd, they're using a third color in here, which is amazing. Whether the contrasting color is used again on the hem and the cuffs, people are changing that up. Can't wait to see it all. It all sounds fantastic. So that's really great. And that will come out the beginning of March. So the next pattern release will be the Tamarind, the beginning of March, and then we'll do the second set of Bermy Basics. Again, I can't remember which gauges. Well, I kind of have an idea, but I better not say because I'll say it wrong. So that's the Tamarind Sweater. The other one I'm working on is I'm kind of visualizing the Spanish Moss sweater that I'd published and I pulled down. I had an idea and it wasn't really exactly what my idea I had and, really wanted to do. So this is the Spanish Moss newer version. And basically it is, gosh, where's the middle here? It is a top down in the round turtleneck construction, long sleeve, and I'd like to make it a tunic. I'm holding 2 strands of fingering weight yarn and a mohair to make this, and I'm really trying to have a fun, beautiful, gentle fade. That was what I was most disappointed about my original design, and then of course once you start sort of tweaking it, I wanted to tweak it even more. I'm hoping that the fade is going to take it into dark purpley colors, purpley blacks, and that's where I'm going with it. The other thing that I'm not sure if it's going to stay in the pattern or not is I've put in openings for threading through a scarf or a ribbon or whatever, just because I think that's really fun. We'll see if that stays in the pattern or not. I don't know how successful that's going to be. The other thing I'm tempted to do is actually to pin down the turtleneck because I don't like the turtleneck itself shifting as much. Anyways, so there's still so much to be decided in this pattern. But the main thing of the pattern is the color transitioning, and I'll have ideas for that to help you through, because it's a bit overwhelming when you've got all your scraps. Like how much scraps do you need, and how should you approach it, and that sort of thing. And so I'm trying to work out a way to explain, working with your scraps, giving you an idea how much you'll need. And also, changing rates. I do find, that said, I do find that the more spontaneous you are, the more interesting it is, because of course then it's not so regular. The last thing you want is to go back to a stripe, or the last thing that what I'm trying to avoid is to go back to a stripe. So a little irregularity is helpful. And I'm already coming off the needles, the stitches. So irregularity is helpful, but also like overall, so that you get to the fade that you want. Just some a tip there, dividing your overall sweater garment into sections. I've divided mine into 3 sections. So I know in one section I have these colors, which are now largely put away because I've used them. And then the middle section is sort of my mid-tone. So it's like I picked lighter tones, mid-tones, and then the darker tones, which I'm about to get into. So this is kind of what I did. And you can see I'm finishing up. The mid-tones were all here. And now I'm getting into the darker tone for the lower body and hem. I'm carrying along with it the whole way Ito Sensei in color olive. There's a theme. I love olive. But I'm running out of that, so I need to order some more of those. No big deal. But you can see this is sort of where I'm trying to go with it. I have another little tray because once I split for the sleeves, you want to make sure that you have yarn to carry on through the sleeves. So I have another little funny tray here of yarn that I've already worked with the sleeves, and enough so that I can then make sure I at least have 50% for each sleeve. The kind of usually concept is yarn management wise, you'd have say 50% for your body and 25% for each sleeve. And then you've pretty much more or less got an evenish enough yarn. So yeah, so this is what it's on hold, or on, I'm saving, and I'll figure out the order of them again. It'll be, I think, apparent, I hope, when I get to the sleeves. But I'm just having fun with the body and enjoying that and going down. I want to make it sort of tunic length so that it is really cozy and yeah, just a big warm hug. I find my whole torso gets really cold, my shoulders especially, but my whole torso. So when it was a really cold day, that's what I was really craving. I had thought it'd be neat to have a split hem, but because this concept is entirely about using scraps and holding 3 strands together, I'm kind of vacillating on a big split hem because it's just not going to be as fun to knit, because you're going to be going back and forth, and then you're going to have to, instead of having yarn management for the body and the 2 sleeves, you're going to have the 2 parts of the body and 2 parts of the sleeve. So you're just increasing it by 25% of complexity that way. It's not complex, but it'd be a very cool look. So you can see I'm vacillating on that. And this is sort of the process of designing for me, is I have an overall concept, but in the process itself, things work themselves out. Thoughts occur, solutions come or not, or, and quite often I knit most of my designs 2 or 3 times before publication, because, even with this, with the little holes in the neck, is that going to stay? Do I want a deeper yoke in the future? Like, you've got those things that you want to play out, and you can try, and then you want to wear it and then see. So you can see how the best planning I can do is great. And then, the efficiency is there in knitting it just once. But really, honestly, I like to work it out more and more, and I'll knit it 2 or 3 times, which is fine. Thank God I love knitting. That's why we're here. And that's why you're here, because I hope you love knitting too. So that's the Spanish Moss Tunic. So those are the 2 works in progress. I've still got the vanilla socks. I still just have toes to do. There's no urgency for that. So I don't feel particularly pressed on that one. But I do have things that I'm really itching to start. One that I'm, excited to start, and that's going to be the Bermy Basic 14. And 14 is definitely in the next wave. I know that for sure. So it's the 14 and the 26, I think, is the next one. But again, no promises. I'm really bad at this, remembering the specific numbers. But so I really want to knit my 14. That's one I haven't knit the big bulkier gauges because I don't really wear the bulkier gauges so much. I love the concept. I love the knitting of them, but I find them hot and they're also hard to travel with. But I have an idea of using Big Birdie for the 14, so that'll be light as air and I can really squish it into a suitcase. So that's my concept there. I'm even thinking I might even do that one even more oversized than I usually do for just this big, fabulous travel tunic. So that's kind of my concept for that one. And I really am itching to get that on the needles, but I'm not good with having a lot on the needles at one time. I find it makes me feel a little bit frantic. I like to have one project for the evening in front of the TV with my family, and I like to have my primary project, one that might need more attention or making notes for design-wise, and I have that in the kitchen where I like to sit in the good daylight. So if I have more on the needles, the third one probably won't get touched, or it'll just make me feel anxious. So it won't get touched like the socks, and I don't feel anxious about that because they're not critical. But if it was something important that for a design or something, or something I really wanted finished, that would make me anxious. So I'm better off just pacing myself with the two. So hopefully I'll zip through the Tamarind, but I know very soon I'm going to have to place an order for more, or actually I should get on it right about now, for the Ito Sensei for the Spanish moss, which will then allow a little pause for me to get going on the next ones, the Bermy Basic 14. And the other one that I'm itching to knit is the Eris sweater. And you know what? I'm just going to do this, and that'll tell me to put in a picture here. And that's the Eris sweater by Ayo Knits, Danish knitwear designer. And it's just such an exciting cable sweater. I'm sure you've all seen it. It's really popular with other podcasters, but you go from literally knit from one cuff across and finish at the other cuff. So it's a really interesting construction, really great big boxy fit. And I love, because I knit so much, I watch a lot of podcasts, knitting podcasts and political podcasts and anything else that strikes my fancy, travel podcasts, whatever. But the knitting podcasts have been great. And Yona from Finnish Knitting Stories, she's a favorite of mine. But she just knit one, and I love her concept where she wanted to be conscious of what yarn she chose so that this Eris sweater wouldn't be too big, bulky, and heavy. And I totally agree. She's not keen on wearing things that are super heavy. I actually kind of like it. But my thought is I like the idea of knitting it in something light, again, so that this lovely big sweater that's super warm can go easily in a suitcase. Sorry, this is a new computer and it just kind of cut out and I wasn't sure about that. But anyways, I like the idea so that the sweater can easily go in a suitcase and come on a trip with me. So what I do have in stash is this lovely Holst Garn Cielo. I have it in navy blue, and I have it also in a charcoal gray. I don't think I have enough in either one. I think I'm like one short. So my concept would be to do a provisional cast on so that I leave the one cuff, do the body, and then if I realize that I need more yarn, then do the two cuffs, collar and hem in the black. So what do you think? I'm worried it's going to make it too fussy because it's already a busy pattern with all those cables, and I really can only visualize it. This is the problem. I can really only visualize it in a lighter color. So I'm tempted, do I order a yarn for that, or do I try and make do with what I have? So any thoughts on that would be great. No rush. I'd love to start that tomorrow, but I don't think I will be able to. So we'll just, that'll work itself out. But any thoughts would be amazing. So yeah, so that's kind of everything for the knitting. Lots going on. Super excited, super inspired. One thing that just happened last night, on speaking of podcasts, I was so graciously offered by Noelle and Kelly of Knits and Pieces to be a guest on their podcast. So that was the Tuesday night Knit Chat Cafe from February 20th. It was great fun. It was live. We interacted amongst the three of ourselves, and then their community posted questions, which we were able to answer live. It is recorded, so you can totally watch that, and I would totally suggest you do. I think it's an amazing podcast. I love it. I don't miss a week of their Knit Chat Cafe or anything that they publish. So highly recommend that. That was such a joy to do, and they're always fun to catch up with and chat with, and I always learn a ton from their podcast. So again, I can't recommend it enough, whether you watch the one where I'm a guest on or any of theirs, but I'm sure you already all know about their podcast. But again, if you don't, it's knits and pieces, so knits and pieces on YouTube. Yeah, so that's kind of exciting, and then I'm just going to take a quick pause, which is not really going to be a pause for you, but I'm going to come back with a little bit of fun Bermuda life stuff. And so see you in a couple seconds. Okay. So for the Bermuda content, I love to exercise with my dog on what's called the Bermuda Railway Trail. It's a national park, and it spans from Somerset to St. George's. Now, it's really cool, and I'll just explain the history of it a bit, because I think the history is really unique too. So again, up here, sorry, I'm doing this to remind myself to put in a photo of the Bermuda map of the old Bermuda Railroad. So the Bermuda Railroad is interesting, and it came about in a really interesting way, I think. In the early 1900s, Bermuda was quite a destination point for travelers, as it still is, but it was a fairly exotic place to go from the eastern seaboard of the United States within sort of a 2 or 3 day cruise, say from New York or whatever. And it was thought that Bermuda was so beautiful. The automobiles were being developed, but Bermuda was considered to be so beautiful and so sort of walkable that there was pushback on allowing automobiles on the island. So the way to resolve that was for a private company to set up the Bermuda Railroad Company. And so they had, I think it was 15 trains going from the center of the island, which is Hamilton, to the eastern end, which is St. George's, and that would be 15 trains a day. And there was 10 trains a day going from the center, again, Hamilton, to the western parishes, terminating in Somerset. So I find that really amazing to think that automobiles were banned on the island. The dates for that is the automobiles were banned between 1908 and 1946. That hit my family quite interestingly, because I always knew the story that my mother is a middle child, and when her older sister was born, the doctor came to pick up her mom laboring to go to the hospital in a horse and carriage. So that would have been 1943. In 1945, when my mother was born, the automobile licensing was easing gently, and so doctors were allowed to have a car. And so in 1945, 2 years later, the doctor came to pick up my grandmother in his professional vehicle to take her to the hospital. And I think the story, I'm not really sure if the story with my uncle, who was sort of 2 or 3 years after that, but definitely an automobile, and I wonder if it was in their own private car by then. I'm not sure. So cars were banned on the island between 1908 and 1946. The railway going from one end of the island to the other, which is approximately 24 miles, was really expensive. It was far more expensive to install than the private company expected. And it was, while it was being really used heavily by locals and tourists, it was fantastic, apparently. It's just the cost of maintenance and the upkeep was just horrific, and they just were perpetually losing money. A fun story of a dear friend of mine who's passed, but she was really a neat character. She was famous for being wild from birth, and she lived in the eastern end of the island, and she would always say, my father was so grateful when the railroad train came, because he was always worried when I went off with the horses that I they'd be too tired or whatever, because she was kind of keen on parties and socializing, and she would go off for days and days and days, where the father was much happier to know that she was on the railroad and not breaking down his horses. So anyways, was a wonderful lady. She was also famous for hosting parties until very recently, and mixing her dark and stormies in her old 1950s washing machine, and she'd serve them to you in her washing machine. It was really fun. Very cool lady, very fun. But I always sort of think, the railway probably saved a few horses. So so the railroad track did a great service, but it was only for not a whole lot of time, because it opened in 1931 and it closed in 1948. So it was only in operation for 17 years. It was just so expensive. Importing everything to make it work was so expensive. The rails, the ties, the wooden, what do they call those? The wooden treadles. There was a lot of bridges, because Bermuda is actually a bunch of islands. We're basically a mile to maximum 2 miles wide at the widest point, and we're like a big, as you can see in the map, like a big fish hook. So the hook that would go in the fish is the West End, Somerset, and the hook that you would string to your fishing line is St. George's, the East End. So the interesting part was when World War II happened, the railway trail was financially very solvent for just those few years, the early 40s. And that's because Bermuda was so strategically located in the Atlantic that we had the British naval base. We also had an American base, and we had a Canadian base as well. So the bases, the military, were what really made it financially viable. But in 1946, that had slowed to a crawl. The war, thank God the war was over, but the traffic for the bases was not as great, or nearly as great. And so the private company just said, we can't afford to keep this going, and threatened just to close it. So the Bermuda government bought it in 1946 and tried to keep it going until 1948, and then just finally realized it was just impossible. So really, that's when cars really came to the Bermuda. But before cars, if you can imagine, the primary mode of transport would be horse and carriage, walking, and bicycles, and boats. A lot of people would boat around the perimeter because, again, we're so narrow. So, and I always remember stories of other people, other grandparents, or, people of my grandparents' age, talking about when they were courting, that you'd go and you'd pedal bike over to your girlfriend's house and pick her up on the cross handles, and then cycle her into Hamilton for a movie, and then you'd have to cycle her home and then cycle home yourself. And they were very fit, very fit and very skinny, and probably managed with the heat a lot better than any of us would these days. So so with the railroad being there, it just kind of was abandoned. The railroad infrastructure itself was not abandoned, and that was sent to British Guyana in 1948, which is now just Guyana. I always get two countries. Now Guyana. I always just want to make sure I haven't said that wrong. So they sold it to British Guyana, the cars, the wooden sleepers. That's what I was. My grandparents' house in Canada, my grandparents used wooden sleepers to make garden beds. So I knew the name, I just couldn't remember. Anyways, they sent all that to British Guyana, now Guyana, and Guyana used it until 1972. So that's kind of cool. The land was left, and it's not private in any way, so it's still sort of government land, and it was just kind of abandoned until the mid 60s, when people started to use it for biking and walking and stuff. And then in the mid 80s, there was a push to set up the Bermuda Railway Trail and became a national park system, which is great. So now of the original 22 miles of railroad, 18 of which are now national park. And so I enjoy it. I love where my house is currently, because I've got the beaches, the main beaches in front of the house, half a mile away, not right in front, but they're in front. And then behind me, almost directly behind me, is the railway trail, and I can access it through a little path just down the street, which is amazing. So it's a great place to walk. It's a great place to walk with your dogs. And I did a lot of my running training and everything like that. It's also really fun and social, because, if you're there every morning, you get to know everyone on the railway trail, and It's really fun. So I have put together some video of walking on the railway trail. There was a really beautiful day when we went for a walk, and it might be a bunch of different days, but the primary videos I think are going to be of the West End. So that's Somerset, which is sort of the very open, very beautiful part of the, well, it's all beautiful. It's just, it's more open, very scenic. And the railway trail really hugs the coastline in Somerset. And then I'll also include pictures or videos of the railway trail as we get into more of the central parishes. So Bermuda's 9 parishes. So the central parishes, of course, being the ones in the middle, closer to the main city, Hamilton. So that's really where I walk. I walk from the West End to the central parishes. That's where I spend my time. And I will show you pictures of and videos of that now. So I hope you enjoy. And I think from that, I'll leave you for this week. And thank you so much for all your comments. I read them all and I try to reply to them all as long as I can. So please keep them coming. I enjoy the interaction, and that's really fun. I really feel like we're creating a great community here, and that's just such a win in my mind. Yeah, so enjoy the videos of Somerset, Southampton, and Warwick. Railway Trail, those are the 3 main parishes that are videoed, and happy knitting, and I'll see you in a couple weeks. All right, thanks, bye.